"Oh, Peg," I muttered under my breath. I knew this was coming and I thought I knew the answer, but it was a whole other thing when I saw it. Honestly, it hurt like hell, and she was going to cheat with that bastard. Seriously, what did he have that I didn't? Besides being younger than me, handsome, rich, athletic, famous, and supposedly very well endowed, he really had nothing else to offer at that moment. I told myself to stop dwelling on it. The point is, Peggy and I were married, and that implies certain vows. If she wanted to cheat with other guys, she should have asked for a divorce, or an open marriage, or something like that. I don't think there's any justification for cheating. I was really angry as I watched her leave with that guy. I recognized him straight away, even with his face hidden behind a fake beard. That Hulk-like frame, Randy the Stallion Muller. No doubt about it, you needed to dress like a damn Mack truck to actually hide his muscular physique. Petty's outfit in the style of Catwoman was even less subtle, especially since she chose the raunchy version of Halle Berry. In my opinion, the least sexy portrayal of the famous supervillain, but her arms were more exposed than anything else. It was little more than leather pants, a bra, and cat ears. Meow. Before closing the door behind him, Randy Blackbeard quickly scanned the area to make sure no one had noticed their exit. He was pleased that they had managed to leave without being noticed. Of course he was wrong, but you couldn't blame him. After all, he was looking out for Ben, not a deadly ninja dressed in black. Besides, Peggy had probably told him that her husband was away on business. I was wrong about that too. As soon as the door closed, I followed the pair, but the door was locked. They were getting away. My ninja skills were thwarted by a $20 block. How embarrassing. Well, I couldn't go through, so I had to go around. I started making my way through the building to the front door. This was easier said than done, as the main area was crowded with happy drunk people in bright Monster Mash costumes. I had barely made it halfway across the room when I was stopped. I was stopped by something red, green, and smelling like an exploded brewery that grabbed and hugged me. "Who are you and why aren't we making love?" slurred a drunk Poison Ivy, whose secret identity was the local real estate agent, Margie. Not just no, but Helen. "I am the embodiment of death," I replied. "Besides, I growled in my best Christian Bale voice and broke free from her embrace. "Ben," she exclaimed in surprise, "you didn't see me." "Well, of course, okay, whatever you say. Have I, Ben? For Ronnie doesn't kill you or hurt you too badly. Do you want to? Hang out later? I'm not wearing any underwear under this." I quickly turned and once again melted into the crowd like a shadow warrior. No, I didn't run. I'd forgotten that ninjas are utterly fearless and never run. They simply move swiftly in the right direction. When I finally made it through the crowd to the parking lot, I realized that even the deadly power of a warrior wasn't enough. The birds had flown the coop, as they say. The empty space where my car had been looked like a big neon sign saying, "Damn it all." I could do nothing but stare into the moonlight. Ryan's car looked like a big neon sign saying, "Damn it all." I could only stare into the moonlight somewhere out there. My wife was in the process of destroying our marriage, and I had no idea where the other culprits had gone to complete their unholy alliance. The hidden GPS tracker in. Peggy's car was as useful as Lindsay Lohan's brain because they were in Rye's car. I cursed myself for not installing a GPS on Rye's car. "Great job," I muttered to no one in particular as I walked to my rental car. Maybe I should have come dressed as my camera instead. At least then I'd have, in the heat of the moment, I even considered shooting myself. My mind flashed back to that day I first learned of my wife's infidelity. While looking for socks, I overheard Peggy and Hannah gossiping outside in the garden. Hannah said, "You wouldn't believe how big he is." "I know," Peg replied, "and he could go on for ages." "He turned me into a quivering puddle of jelly," Hannah continued. "It was incredible." Both women were giggling loudly. I was just about to stick my head out the window and announce my presence with a loud boo, when what Peggy said next stopped me in my tracks. She sighed and said, "I could really use some flirting like that. Being turned into a puddle sounds wonderful, but you have been, haven't you, Peggy and Hannah? We have sex, just not the mind-blowing kind," she added. I think you're describing what I'm talking about. We've been married for 20 years, so it's only natural that some of the passion fades over time. I love him dearly and can't imagine a better husband, but just once I'd like to have an affair." Hannah blurted out, "That's the solution. You need an affair." Peg replied, "Not in this lifetime, Jesus Christ, Hannah. You know how jealous the bee is. He'd divorce me on the spot, maybe even shoot me if he found out." "Maybe," Hannah replied. "But who says he has to find out? You just need to make sure he does it right." Peggy didn't respond for several seconds. "I hope." But then Hannah played her trump card. Her trump card. Or maybe he wants to. "Peg, he's asked me about you a couple of times." "Really?" Peggy said in an eager voice. "Do you notice me at the fair? Ask me about you. Just say the word and I'll set up a date for you. Come on, Peg. Life is short. Have some fun." That was all I heard. Two more of her friends showed up, and they didn't seem to be in on the madness, so I quietly left the bedroom, my head filled with new thoughts and emotions. Peggy wanted to cheat. Well, I definitely wasn't going to stop her. In fact, I thought the intention to cheat was already reason enough. It was clear that Peggy was ready to cheat on me. I didn't want to live with the uncertainty of whether she was being faithful or not. I decided to confront her about it. I wanted to give her the opportunity to prove herself. Then I'd see what happened. Either she'd stay faithful or she wouldn't. If she didn't, I wanted to get proof as soon as possible. I'll spare you the details of how I installed spy software on Peggy's phone and a GPS tracker in her car. I made it clear to her that I wouldn't. I couldn't make it to the annual Halloween party this year because of an urgent business meeting out of town. Halloween is the only time of the year when people have a legitimate reason to go out in someone else's persona, making it the perfect moment for secret meetings. I didn't think they'd go for hotel rooms or secluded places, but I was wrong. The two creatures saw this as an opportunity not to be missed, and Peg planned to meet Randy at the party. I was planning to secretly attend and catch them in the act, which is why I was sitting in a rented car dressed like a scary, shadowy figure. I had no idea what I was going to do next. By setting a trap for my wife, I had essentially handed her over to Randy, wrapped up in a gift package and ready for use. He was probably having sex with a woman at that moment. But remember, Grasshopper, the true power of a shadow warrior doesn't lie in his deadly kung fu or his destructive weapons. It lies in his ability to think creatively and turn defeat into a crushing victory. Then it hit me. Peggy had an Achilles heel, her phone. She might derail my efforts by abandoning her car, but she wouldn't go anywhere without her precious phone, which she keeps in that gadget. Her phone was her lifeline, her calendar, contacts, emails, social media, and more. It was always on the nightstand when we had sex, in the bathroom when she used the toilet, and attached to her hand when we went jogging. I started with the obvious. I called her. The phone rang, but there was no answer. I wasn't expecting one, as nobody wants to be interrupted during illicit sex. Still, it confirmed that her phone was on, not off. Amazingly, the ninja gods were on my side. The second phase of my battle strategy involved pulling up the tracking page on my phone, and I used the Find My Phone feature, which is really useful if you lose your phone, or if you know your spouse's code and password. In a few minutes, I had a map showing her current location in the surrounding area. It was a place I knew well from childhood, Lover's Point. It's the perfect spot. For lovers, I must say the stallion looked like a very stylish guy. He was filthy rich but too cheap to even book a hotel room to destroy my marriage. Instead, he took Peggy to Lover's Point and was probably planning to have sex with her in the car, like some teenager. Not that I was complaining, mind you. This certainly made my task was much easier, since I could catch my unfaithful wife in the act without breaking into a hotel or trespassing on private property. I simply opened the car door and took a few pictures of Peggy with him. Then I went straight to the lawyer. That's when I remembered the third way I could use her phone. I quickly installed a spy app and called her again, this time adding the hash sign and the activation code. At first, I only heard ringing and clicks, but then voices began to come through the speaker. Pegas and the stallion were talking. Hannah wasn't exaggerating. "You're huge, Randy, and it's all for you, sugar bun. Oh yeah, harder. Use your tongue." Yeah, I could taste the bile rising in my throat. "Sugar bun? Did you just call my wife sugar bun? Oh, you taste so good, Randy." I thought to myself, this was a crime punishable by death. The moans and muffled sounds made the blood of my warrior ancestors boil, but I had to keep listening. I wasn't spying on them. I was gathering information. It didn't take long to realize that the stallion felt it was time to change tactics. He managed to put himself in a position where he could wreck my marriage, but Peggy surprised me. She seemed to have second thoughts. She said she couldn't do it. I was a bit relieved. Maybe she was regretting her betrayal. I still needed to punish the stallion, but maybe I could save my marriage. I've never had one this big before. She continued, I'm afraid I won't be able to take it, it might hurt. Oh well, so much for her hesitation being about her marriage or loyalty after all. Surprise, surprise, don't worry, sugar bun. I promise to be gentle and take it slow. I heard the stallion whisper. I thought to myself. We take it slow while I subject your home wrecking behind to A. In the next moment, my train of thought was derailed as Peggy screamed so loudly that it nearly blew out the speaker. And that's how my marriage died. Not with the bang of a judge's gavel, but with a barrage of screams, praising the Almighty and his friends. Ah man, are you okay, sugar bun? Randy growled. Do you want me to stop? No, damn it, don't you dare, I'm off. Oh my God, from the sound. From the way she was moving, I could tell that Peggy had forgotten all about being gentle and slow. It was clear that she was loving every second of it. For the next 15 minutes, I was subjected to the soundtrack of Peggy Bauer's transformation into jelly, filled with more meaningless screams and, oh God, than I had heard in our entire marriage. Amazingly, they were still going full throttle when I finally spotted their car a few 100 meters ahead. I don't recall Peggy and I ever having anything like that. I'd never seen anything like it, and neither had the stallion. I heard him ask for something special. I want you to take it, sweetheart. I want you to take it all. Yes, Randy, give it to me when you're ready. I want it every last drop. Let me taste it, darling. In all our years of marriage, she never did anything like this for me, not even once. Peggy always avoided it, but he or she was practically begging the stallion to let her take everything he had to. I think I finally reached my breaking point. I completely lost my cool and slammed the accelerator to the floor. My rental car wasn't very powerful, so the speed barely exceeded 10 miles per hour when I rammed the stallion's car. The impact sent their car rolling down the slope until it was abruptly stopped by a large tree. I disconnected the spy call on Peggy's phone and called instead. I'd like to report an accident. I crashed into a parked car and the impact sent her down the slope. I think someone might be inside. I can't go down. I've entered my PIN. Please send someone. There was nothing wrong with my leg, but I wasn't about to go down the hill in the dark. I wasn't going to risk it. I leaned back and waited. By the time the paramedics arrived, a few hours later, I was sitting in a small room at the hospital, engaged in a staring contest with a police officer who had a rather sour expression. I really like your police costume, I said with fake praise. It looks almost real. Where did you get it? He growled. Walmart at work, I replied. Keep acting like this and you might get to try them out. A deadly and fearless shadow warrior needs to choose his battles wisely. I really don't think you expected me to believe that you had no idea your wife was having sex with her lover in the car, when you just happened to hit it and send it down the hill. I repeated my story as I said I was looking for my wife, worried about her safety. I tracked her phone and I guess I got too distracted by the map while driving. I didn't see the car until it was too late. It was dark and unlit, and you knew nothing about the lover. He sighed. Well, of course I knew. I replied with a smile. Peg and I have an open relationship. It keeps things fresh after so many years of marriage. You wouldn't understand unless you've done it yourself. I gave him a conspiratorial wink. He frowned and closed his notebook. Not the kind that's a laptop, I said, but a real, honest, gooseneck paper mozgu notebook. Right, Mr. B, that's all for now. Thanks for your help, and please don't leave town for the next few days. I might have some more questions. I left the law and went to the head nurse's office to ask about my unfaithful wife and the stallion. She wasn't very friendly at first. I can't say anything about my patients. Hi, I was in the same accident as my sister and her boyfriend. I'm really worried, and I need some information to calm our sick mother. We're a close-knit family and she's upset. I understand you're related to Margaret. Yes, Peggy, blonde, about 5 feet 4 inches, dressed as Catwoman. How is she? I can see her, of course. Mr. Bort, Your sister escaped physical harm but has suffered severe emotional trauma. We're treating her for shock. She got splattered with blood from her fiancé, who was injured. She seems to have a strong fear of blood. She's also a vegetarian. The nurse made a note in her log. I'm so glad to hear my sister is okay. What about the stall? The nurse lowered her gaze. Unfortunately, Mr. Muller wasn't so lucky. I'm afraid he's lost the tip of his and what the outside of his. I was shocked to hear that the guy lost part of himself. It seems that's the unfortunate truth. We believe your sister was being intimate with him when your car crashed into them, leading to a serious injury. The paramedics were unable to recover the missing tissue. She actually bit it off, in a manner of speaking. I was trying not to laugh, but the nurse thought I was being sad. Don't worry, Mr. Bort. Your friend may no longer be able to reproduce in the traditional way, but there are other ways to become a father. He might not be able to reproduce in the traditional way, but that doesn't mean he can't become a father. There's nothing stopping you from manually extracting the material, which can then be used to clinically inseminate your sister. This was too much. If I didn't laugh soon, I was going to have a brain hemorrhage. I did my best to apologize. Sorry, nurse, it's just too much. I need some fresh air. I stammered and bolted for the door. No. Mr. B4, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but I heard her say as I rushed through the lobby that the news was bad. I barely made it outside and around the corner of the building before I burst into laughter. It was too good to be true. All it cost me was a $4 deductible to fix the dent in the front of my rental car. 5 minutes later, I returned to the hospital and headed to Peggy's room. My eyes were still swollen from laughing, and she seemed to be asleep, but when I touched her hand, she immediately opened her eyes. "Oh, Ben," she cried out and hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, my love," I said, holding her close for a while and stroking her hair. "It's okay," I said softly. "But what happened?" "I thought you were at the Halloween party tonight." I was, but I started feeling unwell and wanted to go home, so Randy offered to drive me. On the way, we got into a car accident at Lover's Point. Randy had some business on the way, so we had to stop. I couldn't. I don't believe she was still sticking to the lie. How stupid does she think I am? We were married after all. She should know me better than that. I decided to play along with her game for a bit. "Don't worry about it, Peg. The only thing that matters is that you're okay. I should go and thank Randy for keeping you safe. He's being treated in the West Wing. He's much worse off than you, Peggy." She looked concerned and seemed to genuinely care about the stallion. "Well, so the marriage is definitely over. What about his injuries? Apparently he's now a head shorter." I chuckled. Peggy stared at me in horror. "Oh no, silly, it's the other one. Somehow he tore off a part of her, and they couldn't find the missing part." She covered her mouth with her hands. "I carried on, but I'm sure we'll find him within the next 24 hours. What do you think, Sugar Bun?" I left Peggy alternating between hysterical crying and bouts of vomiting. I was disappointed in her. I really thought she was a devout vegetarian. On my way out, I stopped by Rye's room. He didn't look too. Goodness, that was a great boost to my spirits. The entire lower half of his body was wrapped in bandages, and he was hooked up to several IVs and other hospital equipment. "Hey Randy, how's the head?" "Mr. B," he said with a faint smile. "How can I help you? Let's cut the crap." "Okay, the fact is, earlier this evening, we had sex with my wife." "A gentleman never tells," he said with a smirk that would usually annoy me. "Listen, Randy, I get it. You were overwhelmed by hormones and lost your head. It could happen to anyone. I'm glad you understand," Mr. Bort said, looking a bit puzzled. "Of course I understand. Randy and I don't see why this minor incident should cause a problem between us. I agree, Mr. Bort. Life's too short for us to keep butting heads over small things. I understand, but why do you keep mentioning the head?" "Oh, sorry, I got distracted. Tell me what your size is." Peg had already started attending to it when the accident happened. She's always had really strong teeth. "You're joking, right? This isn't funny." "I'm sorry, Randy. It looks like you lost a piece, but I've heard you had plenty of extra inches to spare. This can't be." "This is happening," I said, grabbing at the bandages since Randy seemed preoccupied. I decided to leave. "Happy Halloween," I told him. I bumped into the head nurse who gave me a piercing look. "I must ask you to refrain from visiting other patients," she said. It's having a negative influence on them. Perhaps it would be best if you left the premises immediately. We had to restrain your sister to calm her down on impulse. I grabbed her by the head and pulled her close. I love hot chicks in uniform. I drew, kissing her firmly and passionately. Afterward, she just stood there. Her face was flushed and her eyes wild. She looked like she was either about to say something or slap me, but at that moment Randy started screaming at the top of his lungs. I guess he finally took off those bandages, because the nurses rushed into Ryan's room with a set of syringes. I quietly slipped out the front door into it was a cold October night. So far, I had witnessed the destruction of my marriage, avenged my wounded pride, and humiliated the bad stallion. Not too shabby for a few hours' work, but the night was still young. I was still wearing my cool ninja costume, and I still had an unpaid bill from Hannah for facilitating my wife. Oh, and Halloween wasn't over yet. The woods seem to call, but the bell keeps ringing. When I sleep, I'll return to you, Robert Frost. Thanks for listening until the end.